Hey everybody, SimDaddy here. Thanks a lot for tuning in as always. I would really like to start off by saying thank you for the appreciation on my first video. I call it my first video even though it is far from my first video, but it was really the first video to get attention and comments and likes and generate some discussion. There'll be a link in my description if you missed it, but it was done shortly after the holidays when I was getting over COVID, and it was addressed to the new people to the community, the people who might be picking up the game around Christmas time, and kind of welcoming them in with some tips and tricks. I'd like to extend that now to a twofold discussion. One is a continuation of that, tips and tricks to even further your hobby that you might have been exploring only for a couple months now, or years, or decades, like I have. It doesn't matter. What else you could do to broaden your horizons, because even after 25 plus years of simming for me, I find myself doing new things all the time. And I'll get to that now. It's kind of what has motivated this video in general, and what I'm also doing in addition to this video. The second part of this discussion will be based on a little bit of the drama, just touching on it briefly, maybe intertwining it with my other tips about how you should approach your hobby now that you've been at it for a little while. This flight sim community these days is good for one or two drama-filled events per year, and I have some tips about how you should approach those, and it's maybe how you should just approach the game in general, the sim. So first off, I think the most important thing I would tell you is, I think that there's almost a certainty that if you're playing this game, at the very least you're somewhat of an enthusiast or curious enough to want to see what it feels like to get in the cockpit of a plane, even if it's virtual. If you are one of those more casual people, and I guess there should be more of those these days, given that it's on the Xbox now, and I'm not trying to disparage Xbox users, but the reality is that has made the game much more accessible, and that's a good thing. I'm not trying to put that down. But likewise, in that particular community on the console, I think you'll find that there's more people who are just in it for some fun, might not take it very far, might just play around with some planes and external view and not take it much beyond that. You know what? More power to you. It's fine. For the rest of you, who might be coming into the hobby with like a predetermined thing you like, and just as an aside, I want you to take a look at this takeoff. It's out of Truckee, California, which is just north of Lake Tahoe. The weather was horrific. I've never experienced such bad weather in my life, and I could not keep this plane under control. But that's not here nor there. Back on topic. I came into the sim always an absolute fanatic about commercial planes. Basically, Boeings were my first love. But anything that was commercial in the air in my youth, things like DC-10s and MD-11s were still a thing. So I got to see all of those in my experience living near Newark Airport in New York City. And so, I really have gravitated to that over the course of the years. I've never veered much from it. And I'm only now experiencing what general aviation is like in this sim today. Everyone knows compared to other things, P3D and older, there's really no comparison to the autogen and the landscape of those sims to this one, right? So I think if you've avoided flying like bush flying and GA flying in the past, I would advise, and I've been loving it for the last 3 weeks, to pull out some of the Cessnas, pull out some of the Cirrus planes, buy the Vision Jet, fly some of the newly upgraded planes like this one, the Dahar TBM-930. I've been having such a blast learning these planes, and it's kind of out of my wheelhouse, right? But I've been having such a blast that I decided to turn this into like a fly to every 50 state type of thing. And I don't really have a predetermined path laid out. Sometimes I'll hit 2 airports in one state, depending on how far I want to fly. I typically keep it from between like 90 to 150 miles of a trip. But just little things like that, change it up. So my first tip overall is get out of your comfort zone. You don't have to veer too far, but try something new. You might do something that excites you. Second tip, this will vary based on the person, but in my case, I like to fly somewhat organically, and what you'll see now is this crazy ice on my wing. This wasn't set up. I don't set up weather typically when I play. At most, if I want to see what I'm looking at, I'll change the time of day, but generally speaking, I'm flying in real weather all the time. I want to basically feel like, this is the way it is where I'm at in the virtual world. This is how it is in the real world. If you find yourself messing around and giving yourself torrential downpours and bad snows, like I get it, that's cool and fun, but sometimes try and switch over to the realism a little bit. Give it, maybe blend it a little bit for yourself. Try something a little different. You know, to give it to compare it to something in video gaming, take it from like, you know, simulation to take it from the arcade to simulation, right? Just try it out. See if you like it. I mean, you're going to be amazed with the results either way, I think. Sometimes you'll have nice and easy flights. Sometimes like this one, I mean, I loaded in and didn't even look at the weather that was showing. I saw it was a little cloudy, but I didn't really look at a METAR or anything. And on the ground, I was like, oh man, it's pretty snowy and there's, you know, less than 2 miles visibility. And that quickly turned to even worse, right? So I had a ridiculous departure out of Truckee, California. I'm on the way to 29 Palms here in this video. As part of my country, around the country 50-state tour, or 48 state. I'm not going to go to Hawaii and Alaska. You know, and it was weather I wasn't expecting. And, you know, in reality, you would just not fly and you would not depart in that type of weather with that type of icing. But, you know, I YOLO'd it, and you could do that too. There's always room for fun in these games, right? So that's number 2. Try and introduce some realism if you're not used to doing that already. I kind of touched on that with my last video when I talked about pulling up the real world timetables, but that's just a really minor thing. It really only augments your sim if you have like a real interest in scheduling and airline operations, which I do. Thirdly, number 3, once you're ready and capable and able to just kind of get from point A to point B, and I'm not saying go on VATSIM, I still haven't explored VATSIM. I can't really do that with 3.5-year-old kids waking up at random times, which is when I typically fly in my local time. You know, but join a virtual airline. I have recently joined like the Virtual United and all the other airlines kind of together on VAMSIS, the ACARS program, and I'm having an absolute blast. I haven't flown in a couple of weeks because I've been on this GA hunch, but do it and see how you like it. I guarantee you will. And lastly, my last point, now that you've kind of gotten a sense of the market, you might have bought some things off of Sim Market or the Microsoft Store. This kind of goes into my second point about just some of the drama. What I've noticed throughout the community, this goes for people who seemingly are a lot newer to the sim world or have been experienced, but there's this sense of the idea that you're owed something with it, that developers owe you something, and in a sense they do. Like, you're a customer, I get it. You are owed their honesty, their respect. But what you'll learn over time, and this is only proven more true over the decades of buying this stuff, is that you get to learn that some developers are better than others, some are worth the money more than others, some are at a level where maybe they're not worth the prices that they set at full price, but at a sale they are. I've purchased a couple airports that are just not really up to par, but once they get hacked to like a 75% off sale, yeah, sure, I'll take a chance on them. But the point is to introduce some humility into how you approach this. Keep in mind, even for total company-like atmospheres as developers, like the highest echelons, a lot of those folks started with the same passion as you did. They have people to pay, they have bills to pay, they have hosting to pay for, they have to pay for things on the back end, they have to pay for research and development. There's a lot of money that goes into things on the back end, and without cash flow, and you'll come to learn this as you age and get involved in business. I've started a business myself, just recently, in fact. There are different ways that companies figure out how to price their product, right? Based on supply and demand, what they project, who they have to pay, and so on. There's a limit to that. I think there's some glaring examples in the community that the price just does not justify. It just cannot be made. There's better freeware out there, better options. Avoid them, but don't approach it with like this stuck-up kind of attitude, which I see is very prevalent in things like Reddit, FS Elite, comment sections, etc. When you approach it like that, you're going to be a little more careful about things. Do your research, read reviews, leave reviews, stop buying things on a whim. Don't put faith in a picture, right? Talking about you, Captain Sim. But and also understand that not everything is going to be on the same level of quality, and you'll get used to what's what. and you'll adjust your expectations. If you're looking for the simulation of every failure system, of every redundant system, of every backup system in a plane, you're going to be waiting a long time for the type of planes you want to fly. I look at comment sections about new planes coming out, and usually the first things are, is it study level? And I laugh a little bit because what I see from people on YouTube and in the community and on Reddit and places where people post videos is how study level are things when you're floating planes halfway down a runway to get some ridiculously low vertical speed on touchdown. It's ridiculous, right? That's not how the real world is. So, I mean, if you're not a real pilot, if you're not training for that, if you're just doing this as a hobby, and I understand the desire to go in depth and get deep on some of these planes, right? I understand it. It's really rewarding to learn something that is incredibly in depth and intricate. There's going to be room for that, but you need to have some patience. You need to understand that not every developer is going to be approaching things like that. They're going to make a very formidable product that's not going to be quite to that level of intricacy and minutia, and you have to just accept it and appreciate what you got. And if you see that it's priced correctly, where are the complaints coming from? Drop them, right? If someone isn't charging you $120 for a plane that's lacking systems, then stop complaining about it, right? Developers can only do so much. Their teams are only employ or staffed with certain people with certain skills, and not every team is going to be the same. Start to get used to the fact that you will be disappointed sometimes, right? And if you screw up and buy something you don't like, move on. Maybe don't give that developer as easy of a chance next time, and just learn from it like you learn from things in the sim, right? Trial and error. So anyway, enjoy this landing or this flight. I guess it's already over. I was having a little trouble with the controls on the ground. It kept pulling to the left. I don't know what's going on, but that's just the quirkiness of flight sim sometimes. It was a little windy, but it really shouldn't have done what you're seeing on the screen now. Either way, I'm in the midst of this 50-state tour, 48-state tour. I keep saying 50. Currently in 29 Palms. I won't post every leg I fly, but for the interesting ones, expect more videos, some of them without commentary, some of them with. Treat the people within the community well. Don't expect anything that is owed to you. People are doing things for that cost money, right? Another example is this flightsim.to issue that I think got resolved, so it doesn't really need to be touched on very much. But just because you contribute something to the community, if someone else is paying for it, someone else is hosting it, you owe them. They don't necessarily owe you. It's good to see, though. I'm open to being wrong about that, and it's good to see that they've changed their ways, and it seems like we'll move forward together, right? And that's really what the definition of community is. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Check out the next one. I look forward to talking to you again, seeing you, and reading some comments. And again, I can't say it enough. I appreciated some of the conversation that my last video spurred. So if you're new, if you have questions, drop them, and I'll get to them at some point, all right? Have a good one. Peace.